Hey there, welcome to Pulse of the People, where real voices get heard. We dive deep, speak boldly, and break down social and political issues from the people's point of view, raw, honest, and unfiltered. You ever hear that old saying about what we should maybe do with all the lawyers?
Oh, yeah, I think we all have.
Right. Well, today we're diving into a court ruling that kind of flips that idea on its head
Uh,
and asks, what happens when lawyers are actually targeted?
yeah, it's a fascinating situation. We're talking about a federal judge stepping in with a permanent injunction.
Against a Trump executive order, right.
Yeah.
One aimed at a specific law firm, Perkins Coie.
Exactly. And this wasn't just some minor legal spat. It really touches on the rule of law itself.
Totally. So today we're going to unpack this. We're looking at analysis from legal experts who've, really dug into this ruling.
Okay, so let's set the scene a bit. This executive order, it wasn't like totally out of the blue. It was apparently part of a series.
A series targeting.
Yeah,
Who?
law firms specifically. Firms the former president apparently described as awful or even traitorous.
Wow. Okay. And Perkins Coie was one of them.
They were, and importantly, they were one of the firms that decided to, well, fight back legally.
And that fight led to this big ruling, the one experts are calling the Perkins Coie kahuna.
That's the one. They're
All
using
right.
that term because it was a permanent injunction and a summary judgment.
Okay. Break that down for us non-lawyers. Permanent injunction and summary judgment. That sounds serious.
It is. Permanent injunction means the order is stopped. Done. Indefinitely.
Can't just bring it back.
Nope, not without going through the courts again. And summary judgment. That means the judge looked at the facts and said, basically, there's no real dispute here. Perkins Coie wins on the law. It's a pretty definitive loss for the executive order.
So a really strong signal from the court. And the judge, Judge Barl Howell, she had some pretty powerful words about this whole thing.
She really did. She stated very clearly, and this is a direct quote, "No American president has ever before issued executive orders like the one at issue in this lawsuit, targeting a prominent law firm with adverse actions to be executed by all executive branch agencies."
That's quite a statement. It really puts it in historical context, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It highlights just how unusual and potentially dangerous this action was seen by the court.
And I heard she even brought Shakespeare into it.
Yes, it was really striking. She referenced that line from Henry VI, Part 2.
The kill all the lawyers line.
That's the one, spoken by a rebel leader. And Judge Howell's point was, well, look at why the rebel wants to do that. It's because lawyers, people who understand and uphold the rules, are an obstacle
An obstacle to what?
to assuming power, basically,
Mm-hmm.
to tearing down the established order. The judge noted the rebel then says, let's get rid of the clerk who can, write legal documents.
So it's about silencing those who maintain this system, the rules.
Precisely. It weakens the rule of law, makes it easier for someone to impose their will without checks. It's a really powerful analogy.
It really is. And this idea of lawyers upholding the system even when it's tough,
Mm-hmm.
that has a history, right?
It absolutely does. The judge actually brought up John Adams,
John Adams, from the Founding Fathers.
the very same. Specifically, his decision back in 1770 after the Boston Massacre, he chose to represent the British soldiers.
Wow, that must have been incredibly unpopular.
Hugely unpopular. He apparently lost like half his legal practice over it, but he believed and he said, counsel ought to be the very last thing that an accused person should want in a free country.
So everyone deserves a defense.
That was his point.
No?
He also said the bar ought to be independent and impartial at all times and in every circumstance. That independence is key.
And these aren't just, like, nice ideas from history books. They're actually built into our system, aren't they?
They are, very much so. The Sixth Amendment guarantees you the right to a lawyer in criminal cases. And the Fifth Amendment protects your right to get legal help when you need it. More broadly, these are fundamental constitutional protections.
It's amazing how these threads connect. Shakespeare, John Adams, the Constitution, all pointing to this central role of lawyers.
And it's not just an American idea. Even early observers saw it. The judge cited Alexis de Tocqueville.
The French guy who wrote about America in the 1800s.
That's him.
Yeah.
Back in 1831, 1832, he traveled the U.S. and observed that, quote, the authority entrusted to members of the legal profession is the most powerful existing security against the excesses of democracy.
Security against the excesses of democracy. What do you think he meant by that?
Well, you could interpret it as, lawyers and the legal system act as a check. They ensure rules are followed, procedures are met, even when popular opinion might want to sort of steamroll things. They protect rights.
So they're buffer against potential mob rule or even government overreach.
That seems to be the idea. And the fact Judge Howell put that quote right at the start of her, 102-page opinion.
102 pages, wow.
Yeah. It really signals how foundational she saw this issue.
Okay, so back to the specifics of the Perkins-Coie case.
Yeah.
They obviously argued the order harmed them directly, right? Their business.
They did argue that, yes, harm to their livelihood, reputation, ability to attract clients. But a really key part of the ruling went beyond just the firm.
How so?
It recognized the harm to society. The judge found the order could violate the Sixth Amendment rights of, everyone.
How could it violate everyone's right?
By potentially scaring people away from hiring Perkins-Coie, or maybe any firm perceived as being on the wrong side of the government. If people are afraid to hire the lawyer they want because they fear government retaliation,
Then their right to counsel is undermined.
exactly, it creates a chilling effect.
And what was Perkins-Coie's supposed sin here? Why were they targeted?
The allegation basically was that their sin was representing democratic causes and clients.
So purely political.
That's what was argued. The sources called it a naked kind of reprisal. It wasn't about any actual misconduct by the firm, just who they represented.
That really drives home the danger, doesn't it? If lawyers can be targeted based on their clients' politics.
It puts lawyers in an impossible position. Do you turn away clients you believe deserve representation because you're afraid of government backlash? That goes against the whole John Adams principle we talked about.
Did Perkins-Coie get much support from other lawyers on this?
Oh, absolutely. Massive support, apparently. There was a letter signed by, I think, over 500 other law firms.
Well, 500, that's a lot.
It really is. And a former Solicitor General, Don Verrilli, filed a brief supporting them, too. It showed a real closing of ranks within the profession.
So the legal community largely saw this as an attack on core principles.
It seems so. There is a clear sense that this wasn't just about one firm, but about the independence needed to function properly. Though, interestingly, the sources contrast this with some other big firms, like Paul Weiss or Skadden, who maybe weren't as vocal or took different paths in similar situations.
So there are different approaches even within the profession.
Sure. But the argument often made, when lawyers represent controversial clients is about those systemic values.
Right, like ensuring everyone gets a defense, making sure the system works fairly, trying to get to the truth. It's not about personally agreeing with the client.
Precisely. It's a professional obligation that serves a larger purpose for society. And that's where the really broad implications come in.
You mean connecting this to bigger trends?
Yeah, some legal experts discussing this drew parallels to what's happened in countries like Hungary or Russia.
How so? What's the connection?
Well, in those places, there's been a move to undermine the independence of lawyers, to make them sort of toe the line with the government, follow the dictates of the maximum leader, as one source put it.
And targeting firms based on who they represent is seen as a step in that direction.
That's the argument. One expert was quoted saying that if lawyers can be targeted like this, you're maybe 2/3 of the way to an authoritarian society.
Wow. That's a really stark warning.
It is. It underlines that this isn't just an internal legal profession issue. It's about the structure of a free society and the checks on power.
So the function of lawyers is critical, far beyond just their own interests.
Absolutely. It's essential for maintaining the rule of law. And this ruling and others like it that are happening now, they're seen as really shaping constitutional law for the future.
Shaping what gets taught in law schools even.
Potentially, yes. These are becoming landmark cases, and there seems to be a feeling among many legal experts that these kinds of rulings defending these principles will likely hold up against challenges.
It sounds like there's a real fight happening within the legal world.
There definitely is. You hear about the difficulty, the pain of this current climate, but also this growing resistance. Lawyers and firms pushing back.
And drawing a contrast with others may be seen as not pushing back.
Right. The sources mention a contrast being drawn between firms fighting these battles and others perhaps perceived as being more complicit or, as some critics harshly put it, cowardly or traitorous to the profession by not standing up more forcefully.
That's strong language.
It reflects the high stakes involved, I think.
But even with this legal win for Perkins-Coie,
Yeah.
does it solve everything for them? Could there still be like a lingering shadow?
That's a really good question, a practical one, even though they won in court decisively.
Yeah.
Could future clients, especially big companies maybe, ones sensitive to politics, could they hesitate? Could they think, maybe we shouldn't hire the firm that the former president really went after?
So a kind of reputational or business risk, even after winning the legal battle.
It's definitely possible. It adds another layer to think about. Standing up for these principles can come with real-world consequences, even when you're vindicated legally.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. This ruling, the Perkins-Coie one, it's way more than just a single case victory.
Oh, much more. It's really a strong defense of the independence of lawyers.
And why that independence matters for everyone, right? For upholding the rule of law, acting as a check on power.
Exactly. It shows why targeting lawyers, for any reason, but especially for who they represent, should really concern all of us who care about, a fair and democratic society.
It serves as a really potent reminder of those fundamental principles. So thinking about this ruling and all the history we touched on, John Adams, Tocqueville, even Shakespeare, what does it really tell us about what's absolutely necessary for a democracy to function, and maybe the role of people we don't always appreciate enough?
It tells us that the structures, the rules, and the people committed to upholding them, even when it's difficult or unpopular, are absolutely vital. They're the guardrails.
Thanks for tuning in to Pulse of the People. If you found value, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Catch you in the next episode where your voice always matters.